The War of Independence in 1783, a treaty was created between the British and the United States. This treaty was called the Definitive Treaty of Peace. What is interesting is that this peace treaty seems to be leveraged highly in the favor of the so-called loser of war, the British. According to the Definitive Treaty of Peace of 1783, which is still in effect to this day, all property of the British corporations are still owned by the Crown. Other sections of the document show England, who supposedly lost the war, dictating the terms of the treaty. For example, in Article 5 of the Paris Peace Treaty, September 30 of 1783, the king requested payment for all the estates and rights to the land that he owns. It is agreed that Congress shall earnestly recommend it to the legislators of the respective states to provide for the restitution of all estates, rights, and properties which have been confiscated belonging to real British subjects, and also of the estates, rights, and properties of persons, residents in districts in the possession of His Majesty's arms, and who have not borne arms against the United States. The truth is that all the assets held under various British companies, including various lands, are still owned and controlled by the British today.
We have been told that we are living in a democracy. We have been told that we are in a system where there is equal opportunity for everyone. Tragically, we have been told a gigantic lie, and that lie has been told over and over and over and over again.
They're always about the business of attacking empire, destroying it. So they have a military consciousness, an approach to health, approach to us, approach to manipulating, controlling the thought process. They attack your thinking. They don't help you to think, they attack it.
The truth becomes clearer when we simply look at our current banking system. According to a report entitled The Federal Reserve Directors, a study of corporate banking influence conducted by the Committee on Banking, Currency and Housing, House of Representatives, in August 1976, it was concluded that all major financial banking cartels of the United States are all subsidiaries of the London Bank of England. In other words, the Neiman Rothschild Bank owns every major bank in the United States. This list includes Lehman Brothers and Morgan Stanley, recently dissolved from the created economic crisis, National City Bank, Chase Manhattan, and many others. Every time a taxpayer pays a tax, they are transferring their labor to the Queen of England and her heirs. Who are her heirs, you may be asking? All of your presidents and high office officials who are related to the aristocracy by blood. These officials are more commonly known as esquires. An esquire is defined as a man belonging to the higher order of English gentry, ranking immediately below a knight. To represent the crown, esquires or attorneys were used to handle the legal process of infiltrating the Americas. These esquires maintained positions of power, thus continuing control through British Admiralty law. Most of us have heard of Benjamin Franklin and John Adams and their early contributions to the United States. But what you may not have heard is that Benjamin Franklin, John Adams, and John Jay were all esquires to the crown. They negotiated the Paris Peace Treaty of 1783 on behalf of the United States. It becomes clearer now why the treaty seems to align in favor of the British, even though they supposedly lost the war. The Paris Peace Treaty did not give America title to land. The king's possessions in America were protected and governed by corporate charters. Benjamin Franklin visited England and France many times during the Revolutionary War. Again, the British just moved from overt control of the 13 colonies to covert control. After the Civil War, the United States was financially weakened. Low on resources and still struggling to put the country back together, America needed money. The international bankers were right there to lend us all that we needed. In 1871, Congress cut a deal with the Rothschild bankers to incur a debt, which would allow the establishment of a new government controlled by foreign money interest. Under the Legislative Act of February 21st, 1871, the United States government incorporated as a commercial enterprise to do business for profit. What that means is that the United States of America changed from a country into a corporation. What you must understand is that this changed the entire process of how our government works and its overall objective as an enterprise. This Legislative Act of 1871 designated the District of Columbia under a separate form of government with separate jurisdiction from the rest of the Union States. With the United States of America now incorporated as a commercial enterprise, the country could borrow huge sums of money from the international bankers. The debt would eventually get so high that by 1933, just 62 years later, the United States would have to file for Chapter 11. Because of the Legislative Act of February 21st, 1871, Washington, D.C. is not a state, but a jurisdiction called the District of Columbia. The evidence for this fact can be found in the 41st Congress, Session 3, Chapter 62, 1871, when they state, an act to provide a government for the District of Columbia, be it enacted by the Senate and House of Representatives of the United States and Congress assembled, that part of the territory of the United States included within the limits of the District of Columbia be, and the same is hereby created into a government by the name of the District of Columbia, by which name is hereby constituted a body corporate for municipal purposes, and may be contract and be contracted with, sue and be sued. In short, the 50 states are separate from the jurisdictional lands of the District of Columbia. This district is a corporation called the United States of America. Contrary to what you were taught in school, the United States is not a country. It is a corporation like IBM, General Motors, or Microsoft. This corporation has legal jurisdiction to do business and create franchises. Consider the other 50 states as franchises for the parent company of the United States of America. This is why we have a president and not a king or queen. Only kings or queens can rule countries. Legally, a president cannot rule over a country, but can make decisions on behalf of the king or queen. In the case of the United States, that is exactly what our president does.
First of all, we need to know and understand that he's not the president of America, so to speak. I think he's just the president of a corporation. You understand what I'm saying? So this whole president of the United States of America, no such thing. He's the president of a corporation. And in any corporation, AT&T, IBM, McDonald's, whatever.
Countries don't have presidents. Corporations do. Whenever the president is being introduced, he or she may be referred to as the President of the United States. The United States of America is no different than General Motors of Detroit or Sears and Roebuck of Chicago. These descriptions are referring to companies which reside in a specific jurisdictional area. In Volume 20, Corpus Juris Secundum, 1785, it states, the United States government is a foreign corporation with respect to a state. Each of the 50 states is foreign to the other. This is why you can gamble in Las Vegas, Nevada, but not in Utah. This is also the reason why persons who commit crimes in one state and flee to another are extradited back to the state where the crime was committed. This is done because under law, the state where the crime was committed is the only state that has jurisdictional authority. Under business law, every corporation must have a president, a secretary of treasury, and so on. Our president is the President of the United States of America. He is not the President of America. This concept can be somewhat confusing, especially since America and the United States is constantly being sold to the public as existing in the same jurisdictional area on the map. The only connection the 50 states have to the United States Corporation is again either by contract and/or franchise agreement. A part of this franchise agreement is designated by the status of individuals who call themselves citizens. This contract between the United States of America and the 50 separate states is called an adhesion citizens contract. This adhesion citizens contract is known as the 14th Amendment, which was ratified on July 28, 1868. The second part of the franchise definition mentions that it allows an individual or group to carry out specific commercial activities. These activities fall into a category called interstate commerce. Article 1, Section 8, Clause 3 of the United States Constitution is known as the Commerce Clause. It states that Congress has the power to regulate commerce with foreign nations among the states and with the Indian tribes of the time. This power fell under a regulatory body called the Interstate Commerce Commission, or ICC, in 1887. Each time you sign your name or pledge an oath, you are changing your status. You may be asking, what about American citizenship? In law, when you see the words American citizen, this denotes that you are a United States citizen contracted into with the birth certificate, social security number, or through your state franchise agreement, which is the adhesion contract of the 14th Amendment. It is critical that you understand that you are not and cannot be an American. An American is a free person who has not made a contractual agreement with the United States Corporation. Remember, you are not an American. You are legally a citizen living in a foreign state. This authorization granted by the corporation called the United States of America can be tied into three main areas of contract, three of which we have mentioned.
We looked at the 14th Amendment, and we realized that this amendment was really a contract. It was an adhesion contract between the United States government and the citizenry of this country. What that meant for African Americans was this. It meant that the old days of slave ownership, where a white male owns a slave on a plantation, was done away with. And what the owners who owned those slaves did was transfer their property, which were the slaves, from the slave owner to the United States government under the 14th Amendment. And if you recall, when you study history, you'll know that many of the southern states and those slave owners were compensated for transferring their property over to the United States government. So what that means for black folks is this, is that you are not free, you are what is called emancipated. And an emancipation is not freedom. Emancipation is the transfer of property from one owner to another owner.
This process has nothing to do with sovereignty. A citizen of the United States Corporation or American cannot be sovereign because they do not own the land or have clear title to land. Further, these persons have not established a military to take the land or to create their own land within the continental United States.